And I think sometimes as moms and dads, we tend to overlook the simple things, the simple training moments we may have. The preventative is your best form, your best offense, so that you don't have to spend a lot of time correcting.
What happens when a 1 or 2-year-old folds their hands?
They have a concrete experience that's associated with a particular virtue that's being stressed that they otherwise would not understand. If you wait till your child's 5 or 6 before teaching them what self-control looks like, then you've missed all of this brain function, right? The logical sequence that's associated with self-control that becomes part of who they are later in life. It is all about what we do today or don't do today will have an effect on an outcome in the future.
This is how your theology of your belief of how your parenting is supposed to be fleshes itself out.
Someone's going to build a bridge, and it may not be the bridge you want.
So, Julie, we're going to take everyone back to a time before we had kids.
Okay. Long time ago.
A few years ago.
Far, far away.
Far, far away. And you remember that wedding we went to, one of your friends out in Rapid City, South Dakota?
Yes, I do. Yeah, beautiful. We went to Mount Rushmore. And
I think you were in the wedding, maybe.
I was.
Yeah. And we had the rehearsal dinner. And at the rehearsal dinner, they made name tags.
Very creative.
Very creative name tags. And those creative name tags were meant to be conversation starters.
Yes.
I believe, right?
Yes. I don't even remember what your name tag said.
I don't either, but I do remember yours.
Yes.
Do you remember yours?
I do remember mine.
So yours, you want me to say it or you want to say it?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your name tag was licensed drug dealer.
Fully licensed drug
Fully licensed drug dealer.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, and people would come up to me and say, I hope you're a pharmacist. And if I felt like being, not joking, I'd say yes. If not, I'd be like, no. And I kind of I didn't know what to say next.
That's really good.
But yes.
So let's go back to your pharmacy years.
Yes.
So let's just spend a few minutes here talking about medicine and all of that type of stuff I really don't understand that much, but it's kind of cool.
Right. Yeah. So you're in the financial world. I remember you wanting to describe all sorts of investments and how they work. And I'd say, do you want me to explain chemically what's happening when you swallow that Tylenol pill? And you'd say, no. I'd say, good. Just invest our money.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, as in pharmacy and the study of medicines, I learned a lot about medications and how they could help with diseases that various people had, and how to either cure them or mitigate symptoms or extend quality of life or length of life. It was often painful. You have to have the disease, the pain that goes along with it. A lot of drugs have side effects. But we also learned, not a lot, but we also learned about prevention of the disease. Yeah. And that was always so much easier. It's usually just a nutrition piece, a supplement piece that doesn't have a lot of side effects other than having to eat your broccoli if you don't like your broccoli. But prevention in the medical realm is always so much easier than treatment later on.
Yeah, and you went to school for that, right?
I did.
Like 5 years.
Yes.
And where did I learn my medical knowledge?
Yes.
Watching TV shows.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
The ER of the 90s.
That's right.
Yeah, we have some stories about that, but that's for another
hours.
time.
I invested hours in my medical training watching those shows. I mean.
And you brought that into the delivery room, and the doctors always got quite a laugh out of your medical knowledge.
I think they were just enjoying the moment with me.
Yes. Yes.
That's really what I think.
You gave them some good entertainment.
Do you think they were talking about it with their family at night? Yeah.
You wouldn't believe the husband of the... All good.
I'm praying for their family, their kid, as they enter this world.
All right, let's talk parenting.
So I think we've got some people that might be able to help us with the preventative side of parenting. And
Gary and Amber are back with us.
Yeah, they're back. We can call them our residential experts in parenting here. And we'll move off the medical side of our discussion today. So yeah, let's throw it to you guys a little bit and talk a little bit about the sequence of when you look at training and all the things that go into parenting.
Well, and I mean, I think you guys, way more than even we have, but so many parents come to us going, help. And it's something really, really serious, often very sad, very troubling. and they're saying, help us, what do we do? What do we do?
Desperate, yeah.
And, we do what we can, and there's lots of helps, but it's always in the back of my mind, and I'm sure in the back years, if only we could have talked to you 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and talked to you about how to prevent this.
Yes.
So that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about today is...
Well, and then going forward, what do you need to do to prevent future?
Future.
So it's not over. It's just like, okay, now you need to get on track here and start doing some things.
Yeah. I can remember way back when the ministry was just being birthed and first started, once people kind of grasped the concepts and the growing kids, they said, you've got to do a teen series. You've got to do a teen series. We thought, well, in due season, because once we started with our first little group, I think the oldest child in that group was maybe 7, one that was under a year, but we thought, if we could get them before they become toddlers.
Yes, right.
And we could reach them. And then we realized, if we could help them establish a mindset before they have their first child, that would be, and that's really kind of how even Prep for Parenting was birthed.
So they were saying, put the teen series together because because the kids were falling off the cliff, so to speak. And
well, we used to use that analogy.
Yeah.
Can you unpack that statement, falling off the cliff? Because we don't want to leave people right there. Yeah.
Well, there was a very common analogy way back when, which spoke to this very issue of dealing either with a problem or dealing with the preventative side. And it was an analogy of a cliff. Teenagers were jumping off this cliff. So someone came up with the idea, well, when they do that, we should have an ambulance ready.
And this is
waiting.
Figuratively.
Figuratively, yeah.
Right.
We should have an ambulance waiting at the bottom of the cliff.
Which makes sense.
Yeah,
Total sense.
well, almost, except doesn't it make more sense to put a fence at the top of the cliff so they prevent them from jumping? In other words, what can you do that was preventative so that you're not having to deal with an outcome that was unplanned?
Right.
That's when, as Emery said, we would get questions from parents of 3-year-olds, and we looked at each other and wondered, how did you get so lost so quickly? He's only 3 years old.
Wow.
And that's when we said, well, if we could get them when they're, when they're 2, or maybe we could help parents if we could get them when they just have a 1-year-old. And finally we said, we have to set the mindset before they even have kids.
Negative 0.5.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. And certainly it's not that even today we don't ache over so many of the tragedies that unfold as parents are discovering their adolescents may not have fully everything they need to be able to govern themselves. And so they have a very high risk factor. They take so many chances, and you grieve over that. But we always come back to exactly what you were saying, Julie. We could give you a pill that's going to maybe temporarily fix the problem.
Figuratively again.
Figuratively. Yes.
I wish it was
Thank
easy
you.
as a pill, yeah.
Yeah. But the real cure is in the preventative side. We think through, you guys do such a great job when laying out a vision for families. We're laying out a vision for parents, that the young parents, they see what they want. They know where they want to go. So that's the vision. But what they fail to do is to maybe follow through on, well, what are the things that I need to do to fulfill that vision? Because it's wonderful to have a vision. But if you don't know how to get there, then you're going to be as lost as anyone else. And so part of the process, we know that a vision of the godly family is understanding the love of God, understanding the character of God, understanding the life message that's behind the character of God. So we've touched on that many times, and that's one of our central themes of all of our curriculums. But I was thinking, what are the steps? What are the little baby steps? What are the stepping stones that are part of the process? And I think sometimes as moms and dads, we tend to overlook the simple things, the simple training moments we may have. We think about the concept of gentleness, for example. Your granddaughter was doing something that was so cute.
Everything she does.
That's true. That's true. And one of your daughters.
Would any grandmother say
No,
well, not at 18 months. They might change their mind when they hit 3 or 4.
But I had noticed one of your daughters was teaching how to be gentle. You have Willow, the famous neighborhood cat. And Will, at Willow's age, we need to be gentle with Willow. Well, how do you teach gentleness to an 18-month-old?
Don't speak about my cat that way.
How do you teach gentleness to a 1-year-old? Because what we know developmentally is that children first learn through concrete experience. Then they learn and eventually get to a place where abstract concepts have meaning. And if you can link the two together, the concrete experience first, and you can provide that, then the abstract will come in. So when we say to a child, oh, we want you to be gentle. Well, what does gentle mean? We say to a child, we want you to be careful. Well, what does careful mean to an 18-month-old? So you start thinking through, okay, what's the concrete expression? So as was noting when the kid's holding your granddaughter, as she was taking her little hand and controlling and gently stroking the cat, saying, gentle, gentle. Now all of a sudden, there's a concrete experience that's associated with this particular virtue, with this concept. As that becomes a habit of being gentle, the habit of being careful, then you're able to begin to use that same word, but in the abstract. We want to be careful with our friends. We want to be gentle with our words. And so basically what you're doing is you got these little stepping stones, but they always start out with the concrete experience. What we found is parents just rush to the abstract. They want to teach their children a wonderful virtue, but it's so abstract for an 18-month-old. Yet you have many opportunities to actually teach the concrete experience first. And that accelerates the virtue, which means it accelerates in moving the child to those stepping stones that are needed to fulfill your vision. And oftentimes, if we don't do the concrete training, then the abstract training is much more difficult in the process of total training with a child.
Difficult. And then I think as a parent, we get frustrated because we're like, why can't they be gentle? Well, it's because they don't know what gentle is. Or I even think as a parent thinking, well, my 1-year-old, my 2-year-old doesn't understand. They're probably not going to understand gentle till they're like 6, 7, 8. So I'm just not even going to train them.
That is the challenge. And that's exactly, Julie, what we found to be the case in those early years, that certain virtues that can be taught early on. Self-control is another one. Mm-hmm. If you say, hey, we want you to get self-control to your 18-month, to your 1-year-old,
or even settle down.
Or settle down.
Yeah, what does that mean?
That's an abstract concept. We don't know what settle down means. We don't understand that in terms, developmentally, in terms for a 1-year-old or even a 2-year-old. But if you could teach that in a concrete form, then the settle down has a broader meaning and a greater meaning as you move into the abstract. For example, I remember one of our mutual friends had a group of 1-year-olds. She was working in a daycare setting, and she thought, well, I've got to do something with these 1-year-olds. She didn't have a lot of them. She had 12 or 13.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot.
And so
that is a lot of 1-year-olds.
I guess that is.
It is.
Have you 1 on 13? Yeah. 1 on 13?
Well, I was thinking from a man perspective, from a mom's perspective. Yeah, I can see how that could be. But what she did is, she said, because she understood the GFI principles, the concept, she said she taught all of those 1-year-olds to fold their hands. And she connected that with the word self-control. Let's get self-control. And that was the trigger. They were able to arrive at self-control. They folded their hands, and she was able to demonstrate that to the parents on Parents' Night with all of these little 1-year-olds.
Wow. Yeah.
Simply by, let's get self-control. And every one of those little kids folded their hands.
What happens when a 1 or 2-year-old folds their hands? I mean, what's actually going on there?
What is happening is they have a concrete experience that's associated with a particular virtue that's being stressed that they otherwise would not understand. In other words, there's a stepping stone, there's a pathway that's helping the child gain fuller understanding of the abstract because they're experiencing it in a concrete form.
Well, and I think the other part of that is because they've been active. And here is an adult figure saying, settle down or get self-control, but then giving them. So again, it's not anything cognitively or rationally that they understand, but they realize my body was chaotic and she had me do this, and now I'm still. And so they are experiencing concrete going from, because they know that they're being active and being told to do something else, and now they begin to make that association.
Mm-hmm.
Did your teacher at school ever have, when you came in from recess, my teacher would always say, all right, children, sit down at your desk, everyone fold your hands and put them on your desk. I remember my teacher doing that.
Yeah,
and
we did. I remember.
It was kind of magic. I don't know if teachers
The whole
do that
class
anymore.
went silent.
Yeah, I don't know if they probably should be doing that.
Right.
It was interesting. I remember you even sharing a story about someone who was leading like a business board meeting.
Yes.
It was getting a little
That's
out of
right.
control,
Yes.
and whoever was
Yeah.
leading it said, all right, everyone,
Yeah.
ladies, gentlemen, fold your hands.
We got one of our dads who was an executive. He was in a conference room, and that's exactly, there was so much chatter going on. Everyone was talking over everyone else, and he says, okay, I'm going to have everyone stop right now, fold your hands. Let's all get self-control over all of our thoughts. And they did.
It probably provided a good laugh, which was probably necessary to relieve a little tension.
Exactly. But the whole point of this is this particular stepping stone. If you wait till your child's 5 or 6 before teaching them what self-control looks like, then you've missed really in one sense, all of this brain function that is necessary, the habit of thought, the logical sequence that's associated with self-control that becomes part of who they are later in life. Those foundations are laid down early. That's why concrete experience is so important.
And that's the advantage that this current generation actually has, because the neurosciences have developed so extensively over the last 10 or 15 years that they realize there are pathways that are being laid down in the brain of a very young child. So either that's going to continue to be chaotic, or you can teach them skills so that they can have a more organized
But it's not
brain.
lost on those parents listening that have a
of course
6-year-old
not.
that hasn't done anything yet. They're still young enough where if they start doing it now, there's going to be some massive gain.
There's hope.
There's always hope, and that's the
right.
other thing with the neurosciences. At one time, they thought, once things were done, that was done and over with, and you reached an age where there was nothing. But now with the neuroplasticity, even adults can begin to kind of reprogram their
So
brain.
there's still hope for me.
Right.
There is, Rich.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what you were saying, right?
Not that a lot of
I
hope is
wanted to be
necessary.
more life-giving.
Yeah. But when you think it
I received that.
when you go back and think through, why is signing so important? When you start with
Sign language, you're saying.
sign language.
Right.
Why do we start teaching our 5 and 6 month olds how to say please, how to sign thank you, how to sign more? It's because it's part of the self-control training. So you take please, for example. Why we emphasize, emphasize please being the first of the virtues, the kindnesses being to be taught, is because for a child, please is the first one that creates within the child a necessary submission. Those please says, you have something I want. And courtesy and virtue is the way I'm going to get it. And so that please is the first act of submission. Thank you, I already have it. So thank you is a second courtesy.
It's gratitude.
It's gratitude.
Thank
yeah.
you reflects gratitude.
Right.
But the please reflects someone in authority has something that I need. And rather than screaming, I can simply to please, and mom, dad, whoever provides it. But that's all part of, in other words, it builds into the stepping stones within the brain, within the neurological system, the element of self-control, so that when we are at a place where they need to sit or get self-control or they're at 18 months, that concrete habit, which started with signing, which then moved to a much broader application, then which moves to the abstract is made much easier. Mm-hmm. And I think it's such a shame that parents wait till the child's so much older and they want to introduce the abstract when the concrete would have done it much earlier and had advanced the child much further along than just starting later.
And wouldn't have caused the premature graying that happens. That
and frustration.
Or loss of hair.
Yeah. Whatever, yeah. But I hope our listening audience or those that are maybe watching the video, but still the visual picture of stepping stones, I think we can all kind of picture that. But I think it's important to understand we are either going to be intentional in creating this path with stepping stones. A path is going to be created either way. Either we are going to establish a solid path, because a stepping stone is usually a pretty solid footing. It provides you footing. Whereas if we wait, you just even take the signing, the natural way for the child to communicate when they want something is to scream or to cry or to whine. And that's going to establish a path as well.
But that's an unhealthy path.
Exactly.
Well, it was probably healthy when they were born, because that's all they can do. But I mean, we can
guide
direct that.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to be screaming. I don't scream to Rich when I want something.
So thankful for that.
But some adults do.
Adults do. And so it's, I don't want to say breaking that habit, but it's now training. It's the next, it's the next step.
It's helping them develop a proper communication, actually.
So before you get your next thought, I just had a disclaimer moment. I was just thinking, like, some people out there might think my loss of hair is because of our parenting or of our relationship.
We know
it is hereditary. It is hereditary. It comes from my grandparents, my mom's side.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with how hard our kids have been, our marital relationship. It has nothing to do with that. And as you were talking, I'm thinking there's some people out there maybe going, they're talking about this parenting stuff, and he's got loss of hair, and his kids might be a mess, and why should we listen to them? It's all hereditary.
No, we can let everyone know the joy of your children should be growing hair.
It should be. Why don't I have more hair?
I don't know, but I have plenty. So.
You do. You have more hair than I do. I've got a couple of years on me. I don't understand it. It's just not right.
So this whole vision thing has to be offset with purposeful and intentional training. Right. Understanding that in parenting, it is all about scope and sequence. It is all about what we do today will have, or don't do today, will have an effect on an outcome in the future. Mm-hmm. Some things we don't do will have a minor effect. Some things we don't do will have a major effect.
And they usually don't show up till later.
And they don't, until sometimes it's a surprise.
Right.
It's never a surprise. You don't know what you're going to get. In the end, what the treat is going to be, and the treat may be pretty bad. So
I know I've often had the idea. People say, "Well, it's just all of a sudden, and nothing really happens."
It's always gradual. It's never suddenly. If you always look back, it's a gradual.
Yeah,
it's just all of a sudden we notice.
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
Yeah, in parenting, there is no all of a sudden.
Or all of a sudden it reached boiling point.
Yeah.
Like the heat was rising the whole time. But it hit boiling. Is it Prep for Toddlers series where you give the example, the concrete? I think there's a whole section on the concrete in the toddler, and with Brody and the playpen needing the timer.
Oh, right. Yes.
He would complain all through playpen time. He did not want to be there. And then when she had a timer, but Brody couldn't see it. And then when she put the timer in view, even though he was too young to understand
what this thing does,
that it counts down, he knew when that thing went off,
he was done.
I was free.
Yeah.
That's right.
Just the concrete visual of seeing it.
Yeah.
And that's a great illustration too for a stepping stone. We just was talking through with grandson, but his dealing with our great grandson, the concept of nap time. Well, he's 3 now, so he doesn't need always a nap, but they're implementing a whole rest period for him. And they were having a little bit of struggles. And I says, don't forget your timer, because they used the timer for the playpen. I says, that timer is something, but that's a stepping stone, because now it's instead of just the playpen time is over, it also helps them talk about compliance and obeying and staying still. And
the timer is a mother and father's best friend.
Yeah.
I know someone who gives at baby showers.
Yeah.
Gives as new baby gifts timer. I know we have them on our phones, but
like the old-fashioned timers.
But that's concrete for a
Still make
child.
those.
You know, we may have it on our phone, but for the child to be actually see that.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. And I think, too, in the mind of a child, I'm in this playpen. I don't want to be in this playpen. And that nice lady who's not so nice right now won't get me out. So mom gets blamed. But when the child is trained to the timer, the timer becomes the friend. And mom is off the hook from being that villain in the moment. She actually becomes the hero. Because once the child hears the timer, playpen time's over.
Yeah. And so the Prep for Toddlers series also goes into the benefits of playpen time. We're not just putting them there because it benefits us, but just the focusing and concentrating skills. I just want
we can put a link in the show notes to the website, to that book.
Yeah.
That's a great resource.
So any of our listeners who aren't familiar with playpen time, and it really is a gift to our children to give them this time on their own to focus, to concentrate. Sometimes they don't see it as the gift it is, and we need to work up. So
it's kind of like adults. They're moving away from naps. We want a nap, and we can't take one. There are times when I just want you to put me in my playpen and just have some time, where I don't have to do anything. And I've got to do all these other things. So I'm thinking here,
room and sit on your bed.
Please. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. But you talk about stepping stones. I mean, that's the whole other thing. I think most parents, or at least moms, eventually want their children to learn to pick up after themselves. Well, the first stepping stone is in that playpen. When they're done, you help them with the few toys that are in there, put them away, put them in the basket. So it is a progressive.
Well, again, it gets back to the fact that everything is related. There's an entire scope and sequence, and we're intentional in the teaching of that. That's why we don't put 20 toys in the playpen.
Right.
Because then it would be overwhelming for that young pre-toddler to have to sort through. You say, okay, let's clean up the playpen. Well, I look at this mess. I mean, I do that with my own garage. Sometimes I think, I am overwhelmed. I need my wife to help me.
Talk about the garage.
Okay.
That's a Twitter thing.
It's a trigger. Trigger in real life, huh?
Trigger. It's a trigger. But when I put 2 or 3 items in, that's easy to manage, which means as a toddler, I'm gaining the satisfaction of fulfilling. I'm cleaning up. I've put everything back as it was because I'm not overwhelmed. Well, the scope and sequence of the playpen, of toys in the playpen, it all contributes to the self-control that's associated with the very things, the training that we want them to gain for the future.
So let's walk that out. The future. Let's take this scenario. Okay. You got the playpen, toddler, couple toys. Why don't you walk out when you do that? What benefits and what's the progression, the stones that you're going to see as they hit elementary years, middle school, high school, young adult? What are some of the, like in order there? What are you going to see them doing as a benefit to you putting all that time in? What are you going to see some of the rewards, some of those stones that they're going to hit in future years, just so people can kind of get a picture of this and be encouraged?
There are three activities that are absolutely critical for the formation of both logic and success that comes with discipline. Sitting, focusing, and concentrating. Sitting, focusing, concentrating. Where does it start? It doesn't start when I send Johnny to school at 5 years to kindergarten. It starts early on. Sitting, focusing, concentrating. We already touched on it. It starts with something as simple as signing please. Why? Well, that's part of the self-control. You might have a blanket time. What's that? That's boundaries. That's self-control. You have a playpen. From playpen, you move to room time. All of those activities is not simply for the convenience of mom, so mom can go take a shower or do something else, or it actually has a developmental purpose that's contributing to a broader expansion of the child's ability to take challenges and bring them under their control. That's why the sitting, focusing, and concentrating is going to be the ultimate outcome of many of these practices. And it's all geared towards that. Once you have the sitting, focusing, concentrating, Rich, you're looking at should be in all cases, most cases, a very, very successful academic child, a very successful emotional child, a very successful with a child with psychological profile that's very, very healthy, simply because you have provided them the attributes to navigate different circumstances of life. Because when you look at sitting, focusing, concentrating, I need all three almost in every area of life. It's not just academics. It's not just being able to keep my bottom in the chair and focus and finish the task that's in front of me, the school task that's in front of me. It expands way beyond that. It expands into human relationships. It expands into siblings and how I treat my siblings. Because if you need anything, you need sitting, focusing, concentrating skills, even with siblings. So it has this multiplication factor. So let's go back to the beginning of this podcast, when we're talking about so many problematic areas when we're dealing with that older teen or young adult. And we're wondering, how did we get here? Well, what we're talking about are all the preventative measures, these simple things that will prevent really negative outcomes. But in fact, the reverse is true. We know the reverse is true, that propels the child into great successes in life because you have given them the basics, but those basics didn't just happen all of a sudden. They were introduced when these were very, very young children, in the smallest stepping stone ways. We said with gentleness, that's a classic illustration. Self-control is another illustration. And you can almost go through a variety of the virtues of Christ and say, okay, this is abstract. How do I make it concrete in my child's life? And once you work that through, the abstract will follow, but the abstract then expands into all human relationships.
And it is important, as we're talking individual child at this point, but when you have multiple children, again, for parents, for your expectations to be realistic. And again, while you're directing them all in the same course, not all of them are going to achieve the same skills at the same time or the same, we're all in a growth process as well. And so we need some of our children to refine us. So it's hard. So that I want to just say that because as parents, we have to have realistic expectations and not putting unrealistic expectations on the uniqueness of each child in our home.
And yet at the same time, children are born with certain capacities.
They are. And that's important to recognize.
And understanding that it's important for us as parents to, when we set that vision and start walking through this process of parenting, that we're doing so matching our expectations with the child's capacities. For example, every child has a capacity to basically sleep through the night by 7 to 9, 10 weeks. That's just a capacity. Now, what we do as parents, how we sleep train, for example, whether we achieve that or not, is going to be based upon the type of training that we have. But it's not training to reach the capacity, it's training to fulfill the capacity. Same thing is true when we get into the 6-month stage, where, like we said, the signing. Do they have the capacity to understand the abstract nature of please? No, but they have the capacity to understand the concrete nature and the results that is associated with the concrete experience. And as you progress, we as parents will always want to consider what is the capacity and what am I doing to maturing or fulfilling that capacity to its maturity.
Yeah, and as you're sharing, I can't help but reflect back on one of the previous podcasts when we talked about the theology of parenting. This is how your theology of your belief of how your parenting is supposed to be fleshes itself out. That you'll understand these capacities. Because yes, each child is going to be uniquely different, but each child is given, barring any medical, that sort of thing, but your average child has the capacity to learn all of these skills.
I was just thinking back to that previous podcast too, because I just thought about the why. And I think
Yes.
that as a mom, especially as the busier you get, juggling the various things, and dads too, for sure.
We're not really that busy.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot going on.
That's true.
So,
But it's very, I don't want to say lazy, but it's easy to think, I have so much on my plate. What could I take off my plate now? Oh, they don't understand. I don't need to put energy into training them for self-control, to be gentle, to various things. I'll do that when they're 5. I'll do that when they're 8. And so it's good to hear that why, to be renewed. No, this is important, and it will have fruit.
Yes.
If I stick with it without growing weary, because in due time.
Yeah.
even I had a breakfast with a dad just this last week, and we were just talking about a basic thing. I think it was, we had a tire that kept going flat on the car. So I wanted to take the tire off the car to see if there's a nail in the tire, and you can't put your head in there. You have to take it off and examine it. So I took our 14-year-old, and he learned how to jack up the car, take the tire off, check for a nail, put the spare on, air up the spare and all that. And I was telling this dad this, and he's got high school boys older than that. And he's like, yeah, I've never done that with them. And I talked with him about 2 things. One, the training side of it, but 2, then it's the relational side.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what we sometimes miss is we look at training as work, which it is.
It is.
Quite frankly, it is. It is work. And sometimes it's hard work. But as I was talking to him about that, as I'm thinking about it now, I realize that if we don't spend the time training, we're going to give up some of the relational deposits that we can be putting into our children, friends, our marriage, if we don't use these moments to pour in and lean in. And he just said, yeah, I could have done that so many times, but I just take it to the dealership and they do it.
Yep.
And I said, well, you can keep doing that, but if you want to disciple your son, part of discipling is these types of things.
And that's what parenting is. Parenting is discipleship.
Yeah. And relationship building.
Yeah.
And I think if we can help cast that vision for our listeners as well, is, yes, as you said, Rich, it takes longer to do that. You could either take it to the dealership, or you could have done it
myself in
a lot faster.
half the time. Yeah.
But if we can think about the relationship that we're also building with our children, because sadly what we've seen, and we've probably even experienced it to a degree to ourselves, but our kids reach a certain age, and for some reason, we just expect that they're supposed to know how to do some things. And when they're not, or behave in a certain way, and when they're not, we get frustrated with them. But if we've never taken the time to intentionally train or to teach or explain the reasons why and build that relationship, it's not there.
Yeah. Some of those behaviors that we see in our kids, it's like us looking at a mirror.
Oh, did you have to bring that up?
Well, I really didn't want to, but
That could be another podcast.
Yes. The man in the mirror.
Can I add just one more thing, which I find is fascinating? I read a neurologist, a description they gave, and he said, the brain is lazy. And I thought, well, what do you mean by that? And
that's interesting.
As I got into it deeper, he said, what we do in our parenting, what we do just in life in general, in the thought process, process of habits, good habits, bad habits, is we do lay down stepping stones. And every time we have this experience, we lay a stepping stone, then this stepping stone leads to this stepping stone. Eventually, the brain says, that's not efficient. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lay down a highway here, a bridge, because you do this all the time. So instead of a stepping stone, a bridge pathway is now created, because the brain says, I want to be highly efficient.
Or a neural pathway.
Then it's highly efficient.
It's all my medical training from back when Julie was a pharmacist. Yeah.
So the fact is, we could help lay down not just the stepping stones, gentleness. Gentleness leads to the abstract form of gentleness. We not only lay down the stepping stones, but we're also allowing the brain to create the superhighway. And I think how many bad superhighways are created because we leave the child to their own way, their own devices, and we never taught them anything. We didn't teach them please. We didn't teach how to say a sign thank you. We taught them no self-control habits early on. We taught nothing about picking up their toys. So you imagine all of that now is missing. What stepping stone replaced it? Because the brain says, I want to be efficient. And if there's the absence, then the stepping stones could be all over the place, because you have to rebuild another pathway, another bridge to another thought, because there is no habit of thought. There's no logical sequence. And that's what happens when you start early on and you're intentional and you realize what I'm doing here in infancy and in early pre-toddlerhood and toddlerhood ultimately will have resonance and be a guide when the child is approaching adulthood.
So if you don't lean into or guide into the vacuum's going to get filled with something, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and you're not going to be directing it as a parent. It's going to come from somewhere else.
And
right.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
Someone's going to build a bridge, and it may not be the bridge you want.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But there will be a bridge built.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So hopefully to those with babies and toddlers, this message has been very encouraging. But I think to someone maybe with an elementary or older child who maybe hasn't done this last half hour or whatever is probably a little discouraging, because they're like, oh, I missed it. I've ruined my child. What would you say to that parent?
Well, if they're young enough, they could have another child.
Oh, perfect.
You can't start over.
Okay. Now,
But if they want,
this is a family planning podcast, so it's not a parenting podcast anymore. So we're going to move into that phase.
but if they really are intentional in starting over, first, of course, we're going to say, maybe get into one of the Tree of Life classes or going kids, because
Plus, the website has a ton of material, a lot of videos.
Oh my God.
I mean, you get on the website, you're going to be equipped. You're going to be equipped.
Video segments that covers everything. So, that's all there for people to help. And we have it according to developmental ages. So we have the from preschool to pre-adolescence. We have the pre-adolescence to young adulthood. So we have all of the age grouping in there. There's information, but you have to say, I see some things are missing. If we don't take ownership
and a willingness to work on it.
That's right. Well, that's the second thing.
Yeah.
But first we have to take ownership.
Sure.
Some things are missing. There's some things I don't know.
There's some gaps.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think that early on for both Amory and I, we always had this innate desire to want to know, to want to understand, because you two have great kids. We want to know, how did you get there?
Thank you.
Well, you were an illustration, but you're also a fact.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying that, Justin.
Both sides
are
of this
true.
are true. Both sides are true. But that was always a desire. And I think that as moms and dads approach the parenting, as Julie, you said earlier, you see something you really like, then go ask.
Right.
How did you get here?
Right.
And so there comes a time when we're growing in our own frustration, saying, I really need help. We're going to this parenting class. Well, just make sure it's a parenting class that focuses on the character of God. I would say that's number one. But number two, then start from there, realizing it's not too late, especially even if you have middle years kids, it's not too late. Even young teens, it's not too late. Where you get into some challenges is when you're dealing with your 25-year-olds living in your basement and you want them to leave and they don't want to. Now you're going to have some challenges. Or you have an adolescent that's completely isolated from the family. Mm-hmm. It's not that you can't fix it, but you have to understand time is not on your side. The immediate time is not on your side. It's going to take a lot of relational energy, but you can overcome this. Understanding, again, speaking life to a child is one of the ways to overcome it. So there's an antidote. There is a prescription that can fix it.
Yeah, and we can link to the teaching in the podcast on Speaking Life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
yeah, no, so good.
Stepping stones.
Well, and the preventative side of investing in prevention, in prevention will yield results.
I reflect back too, Rich. The four of us, when putting together in both the middle years as well as the life series, even the protecting the innocence of childhood, we focus so much on the preventative. Even when we get to that discipline portion in the life series, the preventative is your best form, your best offense, so that you don't have to spend a lot of time correcting because you're doing your teaching, you're educating.
Yeah.
Again, it's all part of the scope and sequence that's being taught.
Yeah. Great stuff. Great stuff.
So good.
Thanks,
you
guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Life Parenting Podcast hosted by Growing Families. We hope you've been encouraged and strengthened in your role as a parent. In the show notes, you'll see links to the growingfamilies.life website, where you can find more information and resources, including videos, links to sign up for one of our online parenting classes, and information on how to connect with a contact mom. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. We'd love for you to consider subscribing so you get these episodes right when they come out. If you're enjoying the podcast, we'd love for you to give us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice to help others find this resource. If you prefer the video format of the podcast, click subscribe to the Growing Families Life YouTube channel so that you'll see new episodes when they're posted. Thanks for listening.
What can you send? Can you send it?
Well, I don't know what I sent you.
We haven't said anything.
No.
Because she asked for it and you haven't got it.
No.
Do you erase your sent mail? Look in your sent folder.
No, I can do that. Sent to Julie.
Yeah.
Okay. Sing it, text me.
And Ray, can you remind him?
Text
Do
me.
my best.
I'll remind Anne-Marie to No, it's not very much on my mind, so I will text you.
I'll text you, Ray.
Okay.
I'll text you, Ray.
All right.
Okay, let's get going.
I know. I'm going to text it just so you don't have to worry
I
about it.
can't believe this.
And what's
It's all getting recorded. This is classic.
No, I mean, I'm thinking I can't believe what came in last night. Of the whole week, I didn't get a lot of emails. Last night, 64 different emails. And so I said, oh my gosh.
That's the way it always works.
Today, please. Thank you.
I'll check, see if there's anything new. I don't think there's anything since.
All right.
Since you sent the last one?
Yeah. And I don't even remember which one. See, I don't remember the last one I sent, but it will be on my sent.
You open it and
Tell me
look
when
at
you
it.
guys are ready and we can start
We're
this.
ready.
Okay.
So, Julie, we're going to take some time to go back in time for a little bit here. So, pre-kid. We went
Can
to
we start over and do that a little quicker? That was really drawn out. I'm sorry. It's painful to listen to a podcast where it's just a few words, pause, few words, pause.
I did that for effect. They can edit those pauses out if they want to.